Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Welcome to the podcast today. Thanks for joining me. I have with me today Pastor Joel Winters. He is the pastor of Chichester Baptist Church. It's actually in Chester, Pennsylvania.
Upper Chichester, right on the outside of Chester.
Yes, okay. And so he has been the pastor here for how many years?
I came to work with my dad in 1967, became the pastor in 1981, and so ever since 1981.
And your dad started the church, so you're just the second pastor.
Yes, sir. We came from Texas in 1950, and he came to the city of Chester. We had some relatives. We stayed with them while he was doing the visitation, getting people lined up for the first service, which was the first Sunday in February 1951. And so he had visited a number of weeks. People had promised to come. So that first Sunday, we had 25 people for Sunday school and 35 for church service. And we rented an old, we rented a New Century Club building. Eastern Star owned it, but we rented it Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And so that's where we got started.
So you moved to this property when?
We bought the property in 1963. I was still in school at that time, and then they built the building in 1966. So I missed all the building headaches and so forth, and we came back to work with my dad in 67 when everything was completed.
So the property is actually 15 acres, is that right?
That's correct.
So the beautiful church building, it's maybe 10,000 square feet, something like that.
That's exactly right.
And auditorium that slopes down. It's like an old-fashioned approach to the auditorium.
That was a type of auditorium J. Frank Norris had in his building.
And your dad worked for J. Frank Norris, is that right?
He was associate pastor with J. Frank Norris for 3 or 4 years, from 1947 to 1950. And so we went to church there in Fort Worth with my dad, learned the books of the Bible there. And one Sunday night, my brother and I had to say the books of the Bible by ourselves. I don't know if it was at the end of Bible school or what, but we stood up on that platform, that big church, and rattled off the books of the Bible, and it was an exciting time.
So explain to people that may be listening, some young preachers, they don't understand the significance of J. Frank Norris. Explain to them a little bit about, he was the first, or Mr. Fundamentalist of that day and that time, right?
Yeah, he was, Southern Baptist Convention was grooming him to be the next president. He was a very brilliant man. But once they started entertaining the whole idea of evolution down at Baylor University, he got cross with them, and eventually he just pulled away from the Southern Baptist Convention and started somewhat of a fundamentalist movement in his own rights. Pastored 2 churches. One was in Detroit, and the other one was Fort Worth. So he went back and forth, had an assistant in both places that were there when he couldn't make it, but he pastored both of them.
Now, did he fly in those days? He flew back and forth.
Yeah, the airlines were just getting into their own, but he would fly back and forth.
That's certainly amazing.
So he had a big testimony, and there are a lot of preachers. His big drawing card at the Bible Baptist Seminary was taking men from the plowshare and putting them into the pulpit. So that was his vision.
Well, I remember the stories of Lester Roloff, and he was poor, and he brought his milk cow to Baylor to get training in a school. That's a different world.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That's how he paid for his schooling. Yeah, with his milk cow.
It's amazing.
That's a different day, and in a lot of ways it was difficult, but in a lot of ways it was great and better in some ways, don't you think?
It was. He was very outspoken and very controversial. When somewhere along the way he found out the deacons weren't behaving properly, and he told them if they didn't resign, he was going to expose them in the church service. So that didn't sit too well.
He would have too, probably.
Yeah. And one guy threatened to kill him, and so most people have heard that story where the man went to his house and he had a gun in his desk. The man came at him and he shot him. He was exonerated for self-defense. Another time, they had a lynch mob in Fort Worth, and he knew that they were threatening. Most of them were alcohol dealers. They were the bar owners and so forth. But he preached against alcohol pretty viciously. So they were threatening to lynch him. And you know him, he's kind of like Donald Trump. He went down right where they were, and he says, "Who are you looking for?" He said, "We're looking for J. Frank Norris. We're going to string him up tonight." And he says, "Well, here I am." They didn't know what to do with it.
Wow. I had never heard that one either. That's something. And your dad kind of started from that era. And what led him to this below Philadelphia here?
Well, we had relatives here, and there weren't very many fundamental Baptist churches in the area. So he saw the need, and with relatives here, they welcomed us to stay with them while we were here. So we stayed a couple of years with my grandmother in her home, and then then we rented a place, and then a couple of years later, church bought a home. $13,000. I won't forget the price of it. They paid it off in record time, but that was our first home, and my dad had 5 buses lined up within the first year because the church was growing quickly. They ended up, people promised more than they acted, so he ended up trimming off 3 buses and got down to 2. But those were the days. We rented a building, had to go in on Saturday night and set up for the Sunday morning services and Sunday school, because they would rent out the building many times on Friday night and Saturday night. So we'd have to wait till their wedding receptions were done and things like that. And we'd go down and help my dad set up. We got older, and he'd go visit, and we would set up, and then we'd have time to play in the church auditorium. Before we set up everything, they had a balcony. That was a home run if we could hit the paper ball up over that. And then we set up real quickly, knowing what time he was going to be there. But those were good days.
And somewhere along the line, you built an all-purpose building. I don't know if it's a gymnasium or recreational.
Yeah, we had Awana clubs here, and we met on Sunday night because our workers were more available on Sunday evening. But there was no place for them to play, and they used the Sunday school classroom, but the workers wanted something a little bit bigger. So we contacted the public school, and they let us use it as long as we didn't teach the Bible there. We could use it for our recreational time. So we'd take our bus down. I think it was Wednesday night. We'd take our bus down, take the kids down, and then bring them back for their handbook time. And so that worked out real well, and then we just decided we were going to build our own building. Saved up the money for it, and built the building, paid cash for the... It was kind of interesting because a couple of things come up. You always have unforeseen costs along the way. So the engineer said we needed a retention pond, which our architect disagreed with, but we ended up having to put a retention pond in, and we got somebody to do that for, I think it was $10,000, $20,000. But it was interesting because just when we found that out, somebody who was reading our newsletter found out about it and sent us a check for $10,000.
Wow.
And then our goal was, as soon as they finished everything in the building, we wanted them paid off. So at the end of December, about 2 weeks before the end of December, we still owed, I think it was $7,000 or $8,000. But I told the church I want them paid off by December 31st. So we prayed about it, and on December 30th was a Sunday, And a young man came up to me. He said, "Pastor, I just got a bonus." Now, this was amazing. He worked for a bank, and they merged with another bank. And they told him, if you keep all of your customers that you had before the merger, we'll give you a certain amount of money. We did such a good job, he got 10% more customers than they had before the merger.
Wow.
So he came to me, he said, "Pastor, my tithe is just what you need for the building." It was $8,000, something his tithe from the bonus. Can you imagine what his bonus was? His tithe was $8,000.
Wow.
So he said, "I'll give you the money to pay it off." And he put it in the offering. Monday, they were open. It was the last day of the year. We went up there and paid them off before the first of the year.
That's something. You know, where God guides, he provides, doesn't he?
Oh, man, I'll tell you what, God's been so good. We had one situation where we were replacing the roof. We had a member of our church that was a roofer. He said, "If you give me 5 or 10 guys to help me, we'll strip off the roof." It was a flat roof, a rubber roof. And so we got most of it done, got all the old stuff down, we got the insulation in, and started to put down the rubber roof, which was glued down. And all of a sudden we got this weather report that this hurricane was coming up from down south. And I'll never forget, we knew we couldn't finish that day, and it was probably 11 o'clock at night on Saturday night. We were beat. We weren't going to finish. We got down on our knees up on the roof and prayed that the Lord would somehow or another spare us. When I got home and listened to the weather report, the weatherman said, "I can't understand this, but that hurricane has taken a bizarre turn." That was the word he used. A bizarre turn, and went back down south.
Wow.
And nobody could convince us that that wasn't the hand of the Lord.
Sure. My God, that is something.
So we finished up the roof without damage. I was over at a fellowship meeting over in Sioux City, Iowa, and I gave the story about God providing for us. And this preacher down a little further south, he said, "So you were the one that sent the storm twice to our area." I said, "Well, God's good. It didn't hurt you, but it saved us."
That is something. Well, tell me a little bit about the area here, because it looks like the closer you get to Philadelphia, the more inner city it becomes. And you're kind of on the edge where it's more suburban, and it looks like there's growth going west from here.
Yeah, Philadelphia was probably, well, it was obvious it was one of the capitals of the country early on. So that was a big city, but all along the Delaware River, there were different settlements. And so it was rather interesting because you have some settlements were the Italians and some were the Ukrainians, some were the Polish. And so all along the river, you have different ethnic groups. Philadelphia obviously grew when Ben Franklin designed the city. It was 1 square mile, and each block was a 1/12 of a mile. So you had 12 city blocks, and that formed a square mile for Philadelphia. And so a lot of people came in, settled there, and then started to move out. Chester was a booming town for a long time. When my dad came, I remember they had all kinds of stores down there. Spear Brothers it was, rented a helicopter, and they dropped these ping pong balls out of the helicopter. And in the ping pong balls, there was a little gift certificate. And so they gave the time that they were going to drop these balls, so everybody went. There must have been 50,000 people in Chester.
Wow.
And they dropped all these ping pong balls down. And so it was a booming town at one time, and then it started to deteriorate. People started to move out, and from Philadelphia they moved out, from Chester they moved out. So these surrounding areas are really booming now. And then with I don't know where people are getting all the money, because some of the houses here are just out of sight. We saw one the other day, it looked like an office building. It was a home.
Wow.
But
yeah, that's something. Well, you know, to me, as I've driven around the area a little bit, I think for a young man, what a place it would be to start a church or build a church or take over a church. I mean, it just looks like a lot of opportunity for someone.
Yeah, you have to have somebody that still has a lot of energy and a lot of vision, and but still not get carried away.
Sure.
And so we're looking for somebody to come along with a little more vision, a little more energy that I can work with, and kind of see if we can moderately prepare somebody to take over.
So if somebody's interested, just a warning, this church needs to stay fundamental. We don't need any of the progressive people, but there's a great opportunity for a young man that's got his head on straight, wants to uphold the fundamentals of the faith. And I know God will lead the right person here, but certainly it's a great need.
It is, and it's a wonderful area if you love people. I was listening to a preacher one time at a pastor's fellowship. He worked at an inner city church, and then he moved out to the suburbs. And he said, when I was in the inner city, everybody knew they needed to be saved because they were so sinful.
Sure.
He says, you move out in the suburbs and people are prospering and so forth. You have to convince them they need to be saved. So there is a difference between suburbs and inner city.
Yeah, it's certainly true. Well, there's a great need all over the country for pastors like yourself and myself that are stepping down, that there's got to be someone to take the reins, someone with a vision and someone with the energy, like you said, to take it over and take it to another level.
Yeah, somebody that's not easily tempted to just be trying something new. Because there's two things I say that have to be at the heart of a pastor, and that is a love for people and a love for the Word of God. They have those two things, True. The Lord will moderately show everything else.
Well, amen. Well, it's been a blessing to be with you today. We hopefully had some good services last night and during the day on the home.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming. You've been a good blessing to us, and we look forward to having you back again.
Amen. God bless you. Well, folks, have a great day today.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend. You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.